excited to be here with us.
Thank you, Susan. Now I want to introduce the three ladies who are up front. Today, we are delighted to have Veretta Lindsay, Meliah Jefferson, and Tina Belge. These are three people who inspire me each and every day, and I know that many of you feel the same way. Veretta Lindsay is a controls planner with BMW and a longtime advocate for Sterling residents and others throughout Greenville experiencing displacement. And I have been with her on some of those experiences, and I see how she shows up each and every time she is called. So thank you so much for doing that. Veretta is on the board of the Sterling Land Trust, the Sterling Neighborhood Association, Greenville Housing Fund, and SHARE. You'll also find Veretta participating, because she's always doing that, in Greenville Dreams and other programs around our community to improve and educate others. Meliah Jefferson is the executive director of the Jolly Foundation, a family foundation focused on addressing systemic poverty and discrimination in Greenville, South Carolina, and beyond. In this role, Meliah is responsible for guiding grant-making, investments, and community engagement to advance the foundation's vision of a just, compassionate, and vibrant community for all. Prior to joining the Jolly Foundation, Meliah maintained a full-time law practice as a partner at the White Law Firm, where she worked on complex civil litigation matters, intellectual property law, and constitutional law. She currently serves on the boards of the Greenville Chamber of Commerce and Greater Good Greenville. And then our final guest is Tina Belge. We will probably be seeing a lot more of Tina Belge in the months to come. She is a principal consultant and founder of Catalyst Community Consulting, where she helps spark change for local governments, nonprofits, and affordable housing developers. She utilizes her community development and urban planning background, as well as her policy and advocacy skill set to help clients make a sustainable impact. She's also served as the executive director of Keep Greenville County Beautiful, an environmental nonprofit focused on community engagement and placemaking. And she ran for the state senate in 2019. And she's currently, you haven't heard, running for city council. Yeah. Tina founded the Young Voter Coalition, an organization run by young people for young people with a focus on voter registration and civic engagement. She also serves on several boards, including the South Carolina Women's Affordable Housing Network. And she's a founding member of South Carolina Women in Leadership. At this time, I invite Tina to kick off today's conversation.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Alicia. Before we get started, I do want to recognize Dr. Ken Kolb. You see Ken? We wouldn't be here probably today if it wasn't for the research that Dr. Kolb has done. And so we're going to dive into a little bit of some of that and really open and excited about the conversation. So, all right, I'm going to be like very more to get really like close to things. Let's start first kind of with the impressions about Ken's research. So if you had the opportunity to look at them, some of the big themes out of that research and such that is about the drop in Black population that we've had. So we've had a loss of 3,000, but we've also had an increase of 3,000 white families. So this is, or individuals population. So that is what a majority of the data and research is specifically around special emphasis neighborhoods. West Greenville, most notably, has shifted from a Black majority neighborhood into a white majority neighborhood, as an example. The other main points of the research were that affordability isn't necessarily reaching deep enough to reach a majority of the Black population. So we talk a lot about area median income, AMI, in the housing space, and I'm sure we'll use that term a lot. But sometimes we don't always get below that 50% of below to really make an impact on the majority of the population here. And the last thing is that young Black professionals are not necessarily choosing to stay or move to Greenville. So I know there's three big things. What are some kind of first impressions?
And I'm going to, for just a second, it is difficult for people in the back, and I'm sorry, we're going to try to get a mic so that it makes it easier, but if you will try to elevate your voices so the people in the back can hear.
Yes. First impressions. I know it's a big question.
Well, I'll start. So I have had the opportunity to be working with the data that Ken has done along with Mike Winitsky. He does some really great, graphics for us to understand, all of that data and how it impacts us here in Greenville and the community. And I think that in order for us to really address issues, it's important for us to have facts that come to light and for us to face those facts head on. And so I just really appreciate that this data.
Can y'all take just a second, Paul?
Sure.
We can't hear you in the back.
That's fair.
And we want to hear every word. So we are whipping out our karaoke machine here. You can stay for a little bit after if you want to sing some karaoke. Y'all don't want to hear that. See if I can. All right, let's see. Is it on? Turn that on. Here we go.
Is this better?
Yeah.
So, what I was saying was that I think it's important for us to not just talk about this from a, emotional or moral standpoint, but really talk about it from the standpoint of what the data is telling us. And I think that, it is, even though people will try to dismiss the data, it's difficult for us to do that. The numbers are right in front of you. And so I think that for me, the data says that Greenville, that a lot of us want to believe that we live in, is not the reality for many people, right? And so we need to get to the crux and the core of why people, one, are leaving or are forced to leave. And then the second thing is, particularly for younger people who are growing up here in Greenville, they leave and they don't want to come back. And I think for many of us I now call Greenville home, I would like to think that I'm cultivating a place that my daughter would at least consider returning to when she graduates from college and wants to set out on her path as an adult. But that is my thinking. I think that we really need to come to terms with why that is.
For me, being a long time Greenville native, leaving Greenville and then coming back, I came back because my mother, my grandmother, my family saw the need. So the special emphasis neighborhood that we call SCN, we've lost that special emphasis neighborhood, CDBG, which is Community Development Grant, because of the amount of gentrification that's happened in our neighborhoods. It's not a one-to-one. I moved out at one time, 10 seniors out of Sterling, but only 30 white families moved in. So it's less than the one-to-one numbers that you see. People are having to leave, and they leave from poor neighborhoods to poor neighborhoods. You have people that are moving because they're being evicted. Pleasant Valley has the worst that we've seen. They move from poor to worse. They live in these dilapidated, overpriced hotels. We just saw last week the Motel 6 on Way Hampton was condemned. People should not be living in hotels here in this Greenville. One of the things that really concerns me with Greenville is we're not open, we're not transparent, and there's no trust anymore amongst the people. One of the statements that really bothers me is on the city website under the affordable housing, and I'm gonna read it verbatim. I'm not gonna tell you who wrote it, but I am going to read it verbatim. And they say, we invest in people. Money is not the only answer. Partnership, creativity, mindfulness, and accountability are required for a positive impact on the quality of life for all. When we think about neighborhoods, we don't see the data, because if you saw the data, you would see the people. Once you see the people, it makes more sense. They think of people as a ledger. Let's think about an accounting ledger, debits and credits. When you go into these sin neighborhoods, you think of all the poor people, their debits. You think about the poor streets. There's no food, we're in a food desert. All of those are debits. But let's think about gentrification. We get higher price homes, that's taxation. Okay, that's a credit. So all those credits start outweighing the debits. You wanna know where the people that are debits go? They don't care. Because if you think about the people that are debits, that's the blood that we see every day. But then you think about all of those credits, everybody wants to work in the black. That's what happens, it turns green. It's about money. At the end of the day, it's not gentrification, it's money. It's the blood on our hands.
That makes me think, I mean, the affirmation of all this data, and very anecdotal as well, that we see. But also we're seeing it in the flip of our housing market, right? And also the data person, and we flipped our housing and our home ownership and our rental too as well. And that is a huge part to do with displacement we've seen. So, Veretta, as a Greenville native, how has our city changed for you? And how do you think it's changed the Black community?
Piggybacking on what Meliah says, for those that are fortunate enough to go to school, they're not coming back to this Greenville. It's not a Greenville for all. We can say that it is. I'll give you pure numbers. The day after Thanksgiving, I walked on the Swamp Rabbit Trail and I saw 2 other people that looked like me. That's the Greenville for all that we're developing. When I go downtown and if I want to go to the Lazy Goat, I don't see other people down there that look like me. I can remember a time when I was 12, 13 years old, and we would walk down Pilkington Street and everybody I said hello to, they look like me. So when you don't have people that you can identify with, whether they look like me or not, because we can have neighbors like Ken Hall, who lives in the Green Avenue community. We are neighbors in a sense, we're family. It doesn't matter if we look alike, but we have nothing in common. When you have $1 million houses being built besides $60,000 mansions. When we go to city planning and the developers get 15 minutes to talk, community members get 2 minutes. That's not agreement for all. So if we're gonna go and talk to these white developers, and then we're gonna talk to these Black people, you're giving them 15 minutes, you're giving me 2. That's 750% more time that they have to prove their point. That's not agreement for all. That's injustice.
So follow that up, so Meliah, as a Black professional woman, what has yours experience been like moving here to Greenville?
So I'm gonna date myself a little bit, because I've actually been in Greenville for a significant amount of time. I mean, this is probably I've been here for nearly 18 years, right? So Greenville is home for me. It's where I birthed my daughter and started my family and, really came into my own as my career. So Greenville's home, but I do, remember when I first came to Greenville, and it was a big decision for me and one that my family and friends questioned because they thought that I was going to start my career in our capital city in Greenville, where I went to college and law school. Many people saw that as a place where, as you see a lot more Black professionals thrive in Columbia. And so they really thought that I would start my career there, and they wanted me to start my career there. So when I considered Greenville as an option, I was questioned. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Are you sure that's a place where you think you can find home? And I took a chance. And I will say I took a chance because of the firm that I decided to come work for. And in a firm where I was the only Black person at the firm. When I started, I was the only Black attorney. There were no Black staff people. And so I knew what I was walking into. what I didn't expect was the fact that when I walked outside of the walls of my law firm, that I would still be the only Black person. I thought, I would see more people, encounter more individuals who I could identify with, at least from a racial standpoint. And to Veretta's, point, right? Those aren't the only commonalities, because I can certainly say that within the walls of the firm that I work with, I found a lot of inclusion and not just acceptance, but understanding and desire to make sure that I really found everything that I needed here, despite the fact of racial difference. But when you do go into a restaurant, and it is very often that I sit down and I am the only person of color in that restaurant. When I go to performances of anything that is not majority Black or minority performance, I can look around the hall, I can look around the Peace Center and count how many people are there. And that is not because Black people are not here in Greenville, right? It is not because it is because they don't feel welcome in those spaces. And I often get called in to those spaces to be included because somehow I'm different. And that, for me, is weighty, because I feel like, okay, well, I have been identified as someone who's not like the others. And so when I'm in these spaces, I need to be on my best behavior, represent well, and make sure, because I want them to call other people in, right? But then it also is very disheartening and sad, right? So that is the reality of kind of how my experience has been as a young professional-ish. And as I've grown in my career, and now my daughter is a part of the Greenville community, I wish I could say that it is different, and it's not. It's not. We are still an incredibly segregated city. And I mean, where we worship, how we educate our children, where we choose to spend our spare time, all of those things are really still very segregated. And as the wealth gap increases, it becomes worse because of lots of different statistics that go into the wealth gap. But as you make more money, there are less and less Black people in those demographics. And not just, I mean, I'm talking about Black community because that's the demographic that I belong to. But I mean, when you think about other minority communities in Greenville, there's still this broad chasm between each other, whether you're talking about Hispanic community, even when you talk about the LGBTQ community, right? There's just this wide gap between feeling like you're a part of Greenville and that you just exist on the outside edge of Greenville.
And I'm gonna piggyback off of what Meliah said. I worked 13 years for a German company. By trade, I'm an electrical mechanical engineer at Princeton University. I was the only Black, the only lady for this company in the whole world. So as I was traveling the world, I was always the only one in the room. And, my counterparts were all men. There was not another lady engineer in the whole world that even looked like me remotely. So when I went into spaces and I would represent that company, and sometimes I'd have on nondescriptive clothing, the people will look right through me. And I'm the person coming there to troubleshoot your equipment. The plant is down. Okay. So, and that hasn't been many years ago, and I left that job. and I've been at BMW, and I'm probably not gonna be there much longer. Because there's a lot of work to do. And I think I do more work on the ground than I do at BMW. Because there is a lot of work to do, and if I ever find somebody that partners with me, I'm gonna call you. And I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to ask for money. I'm not afraid to ask for your time. Tina knows that. And people call me fire because I have a desire that we should all be equal. We should all be able to have hooves under roofs and heads in beds. There's no reason why in this economy at this time, anyone should be sleeping on the street. I go down Academy, and there are people sleeping at the QT. My friend in the audience can tell you, we can be standing in a neighborhood in Nicholtown. We can be in District 25, or we can be in Sterling in an all-black neighborhood. And the policing, they will come by. They will come by. And then finally, they'll stop and ask, what are you guys doing? We're not dispersing. We're conversating. And everybody, no. Don't move. We have a right to stand here. We're not breaking any laws. So to be Black in Greenville is not the same for those that don't look like us. It's that little thing called melanin that makes us so different. But at the end of the day, when that purple inside of our veins right now turns red, and we lose that O2, we're all the same.
Thank you. Gosh, this is good, Veretta. Things. Okay, so we're thinking about as a community, what are things we can do to, if you look at the research, there's not like walking a lot of this back, right? We've lost a lot, even if we address the 1,600 Black households that have been impacted and gentrified, there are still just long lasting, but how can we make Greenville a place to be more inclusive? What are some practices, policies, and programs?
So from a housing perspective, I think that one of the best things you can do is use your voice, right? Often when we see developments that are proposed in Greenville that would give people an opportunity to have more equitable housing choices or housing choices that are attainable and desirable, what we end up with is a lot of opposition to those developments. And you get what is called the NIMBY effect, right? Not in my backyard. And it is extremely powerful because those people are highly motivated to make sure that the person who represents them and everyone else that is a decision maker knows that this is unacceptable in my neighborhood, and I pay taxes, and I pay more taxes than someone else. So you need to pay attention to me because I don't want this in my neighborhood. Well, I don't think, for me, I personally believe that there are often lots of other people in the neighborhood who actually don't mind that development being there, but we don't mobilize the same way. And so it is important that if there's an opportunity for a development to be built and for your neighborhood to be more inclusive, for you to welcome people into spaces that you might not often see them, for you to speak up and say, I actually do want that. I'm not afraid that people who don't look like me, people who don't make the same amount of money as me, I'm not afraid for them to be a part of my neighborhood because that makes my neighborhood better. It makes my children better people. They have an opportunity to forge friendships with people who have differences, and they get to see that those differences aren't really that big and that they have more in common. And, it is really, really important for you to lift up your voice. I think that is one of the best things that you could possibly do is to be the other side of the narrative that our elected officials often hear. They don't often hear from the people who actually want to see inclusion, and I think it's important to do that.
I just want to say too, with the NIMBY, you just said those are two prominent myths. They are myths, right? That a rental is going to negatively impact your property values. This has been disproven time and time again. And renters are actually paying more in property taxes, right? Because they're a commercial property, they pay 6%, right? And that's passed down from the commercial landlord down to the renter. So I just want to point that out, because so y'all have some little weaponry when you hear it.
I think for me, one of the things we have to do is we have to be intentional. We always hear about affordable housing in the media. It's not affordable housing, okay? Affordable housing per HUD is 30% of AMI. So for those that don't understand AMI, they said about 2 years ago, about 90,000. I say it's probably 110, 120 easy. So 30% of that would be $36,000. When you hear affordable is 60% AMI. They interchange that word with workforce housing. So a true affordable housing, as it should be defined each and every time, should be targeting those making 30% of the area median income. But what they're truly targeting is workforce housing, which is 60%, which means $72,000. I'll give you an example. There is a new project coming to Lawrence Road, and Taylor Davis of NHE, I love you. Because Taylor and I have partnered up a lot to put heads to beds. But let me give you some numbers statistically. 10 units are going to be at 20%. We're going to get 11 units at 30%. And all of this is AMI. But we're going to get 68%. 68 units at 60%. And then 11 units at 70%. Is that affordable or is that workforce housing? Because they're going to tell you in the media, we're building housing for people that make $12,000 to $60,000. And then you're going to have an influx of people running down there that make $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month, and a one-bedroom apartment's going to be $1,400. Make it make sense, people, okay? We have to be intentional about these definitions. We need to be open and transparent, because until we do, we're not going to trust those policymakers. But if you want to talk about what can we do, let's grandfather those people that are in those neighborhoods that have been gentrified with their taxes. Let's mandate that these developers that come in and gentrify our neighborhoods, find out first, is there a neighborhood association? If there is, they should put 2% at least of whatever profit that they're making back into that neighborhood. Now we got financial literacy programs, we got educational programs, we have summer workshops, not only for the children, but for the parents. Because who are we serving? We have to serve these parents. And if you can lead your children, there's nothing better than that, okay? Another thing we can do is we can require developers across the board to get the same number of affordable units in each development, whether it be the Mosaic, the Alliance, or what have you, ABC on XYZ screen. If you're gonna do 15% affordable units, make it 15% across the board. Put all this, I'm gonna do 12%. Oh, I think we can only do 11%. Make it 20, 25% across the board, because we're leaving out those that missing middle. We're leaving out all of these seniors. We build low income senior housing, Pleasantburg Senior, and all of those other developments. And if they're not high end, they're denied two things that God has given us free: vitamin D and also O2, because they don't have balconies that they can readily access. So imagine if you're in a wheelchair, you gotta get on an elevator, you gotta roll yourself out. On a bright, sunny day like today, sometimes vitamin D and O2 just makes a person feel better. So we need to be intentional about the relationships that we allow in our communities to come in and take over.
Thank you. And I think that mentions such a good point, because we say workforce housing, that has an unintended consequence, just using that term. That implies that affordable, that people don't work. below a certain, that's 20%, that's 30%, that's restaurant workers, that's retail workers. Okay, so we're gonna open up for questions from the audience, I think as well as the Zoom. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to share that, my name is Dorcas Abercrombie, this is my husband Philip, and we live in the Laurel Creek community. Laurel Creek was established over 150 years ago, and now, talking about gentrification, it's over for Laurel Creek. On both sides, there's Laurel Drive, which is close to Malden, Road, and then on our side, where you all can see on Lawrence Road, you see those new, it's a sign out there, I think it's Brookfield or Brook something, that's, they're building the road coming out onto, Lawrence Road out there where, the BMW dealership is. There was 60 acres sold, and that's where the BMW dealership is. And they're putting 450 houses in our community. So this is their houses are gonna, I think they're $200,000 to $300,000 to stay there. The Laurel Creek community was established, like I said, over 150 years ago, because some white people owned the land and they wanted to give the land to some of their offspring. So they need black offspring. So this is how the community got started. The thing is, it's just been such injustice. We had no sewer, no water, no lights. I've been living here for over 40 years in Laurel Creek. My husband was born in Nickeltown. His family house is gone. I mean, somebody bought it, and now it's worth, I guess, $1 million where he used to live. It's just terrible. Black folks being, run out. At first, when they started working in the Nickeltown area, some of the black folks came into Laurel Creek. And now with Laurel Creek in an apartment, to get a place to stay in Laurel Creek is $1,400 to $1,800. And we're talking about a little square, brick home. Is not a home. Well, Philip and I, we stayed in what had been a grocery store when we first moved down here. Now with the 60 acres, it's all clear. All the animals that were there, all the trees are gone. There are deer in our yard. We had a coyote in our yard the other day. We have a lot of raccoons and possums and stuff that was in the 60 acres. And this is just on one side of Laurel Creek. Like I said, on the backside where Malden Road is, they cleared all that land. We've gone to the Malden city council, talked to the mayor. The mayor didn't know anything about this. They're jackhammering and doing all this dust. This lady, who lives there, one lady, she was, had arranged for us to go to Malden City Hall. It's just terrible. Their houses, their foundations of the houses that they have are they're being, broken up and stuff like that. It's just, the community, like I said, the community is just about gone. I predict that, anyway, let me tell you this, that a county council person came to we have a neighborhood association. A county council person came to our neighborhood association, and he said they weren't gonna do anything for us. And we were, calculating that, the community has given over $1 million, over $1 million, not probably 2 or 3 million in taxes, all the years that the community has been there. And, they're not gonna, we go to county council meetings for years, still go, nothing. They just don't care. I was reading this book, and they had done a similar thing in the Charleston community, in the Black community in Charleston. The white people refused to put a sewer line in there. So now, there's no sewer, there's just septic tanks at each home. And it's just ironic. I don't want to cuss, but black doo-doo is going all all over Greenville. Because, eventually these septic tanks overflow, this stuff, this is a mess. We've been asking for sidewalks for over 40 years. It took 30 years to get a stop sign at Malden Road and Ridge Road. I know some of y'all remember the baseball stadium that was there. We tried to, have it moved someplace else, but that didn't happen. Oh, I know. Huh? 5 minutes. It takes a whole lot longer. Affected by this, I'm sorry, but and I feel so bad for Philip and his family. They grew up in Nickeltown, they knew everybody, there were businesses and, everything's gone. Everything's gone. So, okay. Okay, thank you.
So I'm curious, like I'm working with a woman who lives up around on Woodside, not far from here, whose house was destroyed in Hurricane Helene. And we found a great affordable housing builder who works with Homes of Hope. And he has said to me, to build a basic house, and this is a single family house, not a condo or an apartment. It costs $150 a square foot, and that's basic. And and this guy seems really, really on the up and up. He really seems to care about this family. He's agreeing to do this without making money. But, they got enough, to rebuild their 1,500 square foot house. It's like 200, she already owns the land. So it's like, we're $90,000 short after a full insurance payout. So when we talk about, building the properties that need to be built, are there developers who can build, how do you build true affordable housing? How do you make the dollars work? How do you make the money work? Not making a huge profit, but how do you make the dollars work for a developer to be able to build truly something that somebody making 20% of AMI could afford?
Tina might have a more specific answer, but I'm giving my best shot and kind of what I think. So I think that for us to have truly attainable, affordable, decent housing for people, it is going to take a collective effort, and for many of us to recognize that the luxury and convenience that we enjoy as being part of Greenville comes at a cost, and we need to be willing to pay that cost. And that means when people come in and they do large developments, there are so many tax credits, all types of things that they're eligible for. And I know that they like to talk about, individuals getting subsidies or welfare or public benefits, but that is what's happening for these corporations. They are getting subsidies and public dollars to line their pockets. And so we need to be able to have policies that allow developers, people who are willing to come in and build these houses at cost, to get some of those benefits of those tax credit subsidies that we allow for larger developments. Because otherwise it is the cost of housing, the cost of land is outpacing the cost of the average person's ability to afford a house. And one other statement, when we talk about AMI in Greenville, we have to keep in mind that that's not the average person that you walk into a grocery store and meet. Our AMI includes a lot of wealth at the upper end of the scale. And so if we were to take out kind of maybe the top 10% of earners in Greenville, our AMI would drop significantly. You will notice over the last couple of years, the average median income in Greenville has increased steadily, not because people who live in Greenville are doing better. It's because more wealth is being poured into Greenville. And so we need to really account for that and understand that most of our neighbors are not making six figures. Our neighbors are struggling. And we do a lot of financial literacy for people who are at the bottom of the pay scale, but I'll tell you, nobody knows how to budget more than a family that only has $1,000 a month to live off of. And what they need is not assistance figuring out how to budget. What they need is more money. What they need is to have a living wage, and we need to advocate for that as well.
Thank you so much. And to follow up on that, there are things we can do. There are land trust models to take that land out of the equation that takes that chunk of what the cost could be. There are small things. There are Sterling Land Trust that already exists, and there's more that are being created. That's a model. There's a lot of state laws that we can pass. Also, we need not just those carrots sometimes, but those sticks as well. It's not an easy thing, but what Meliah just said about, can we arm kind of the developers who are willing to build it at cost? That's going to be your nonprofit developers. That's going to be your chodos, their under housing urban development. So those are the kind of things that we have to bolster and support. But I also think the other side of the coin, as you said, is income. I would say coins somehow had three sides. I think about childcare a lot. I've got 2 kids, and I think right now in every state, childcare is more than the cost of a mortgage or rent in every single state. And so if you're thinking about how can we alleviate these things, there are things we can do on the local level, expanding our childcare, right? Right now, I just sent my daughter for summer camp in the city. It's $475 for 2 weeks. That's amazing. That's usually what I pay for 2 months. That's usually what I pay in 1 week for my 3-year-old for childcare. $475. We need to be I should be paying more to open up more childcare in summer camps in the centers that are empty. We should be paying more to open up after school programs. These are the other sides of the coins that we can do to help lift up families and invest money in people. That Veretta so well said. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm ready to work for you.
Already, I think she said,
So I'm very impressed with identifying the problem, and you've even identified some of the things that need to be done to get those problems remitted. My question is, how do we start? Where do we start? And when do we start?
When do we start? We start now. We're already late. This lady talked about Laurel Creek. Yvonne Reader and I talked about Nicholtown. We talked about Nicholtown one night at Greenville Dreams. Nicholtown talked about how many families was it? 8 or 9 families that were about to be displaced right before Christmas. And they said, there's nothing we can do. Excuse my language, hit the devil is a lie. They were going to be put out by Christmas, and this was October. And they had 1 month to find something. And I think their average rent over there was about $650. And I got on the phone, and the next morning I sent the email to Nicholtown and said, okay, they have a February 1st. It takes partnership. It takes dedication. It takes the willingness to want to do the work. For those people and all these politicians that sit up there and say, oh, I have an open door policy. Well, I'm going to test your open door policy. I'm going to call you at home. I'm going to email you until I get an answer. We're talking about real people with children like Tina's talking about. Down in 25, we have 4 hotels that are at 100% capacity with a waiting list. They have formed a community because they cannot afford daycare. The lady in 102 watches the kids in 106 and 203 and 303. One room. And these people are paying $800 a month. Water coming on the sides of the walls, mold. But as long as we're incentivizing all those people that touch downtown, it's okay. And yay, this Greenville. No, it's not. So you want to know how we do it? We do it now. We form workshops. We're all here. We say, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to go into these communities. We need to identify the resources that are needed. because the poor cannot incentivize the poor.
And we have,
Where do I sign up?
and we have to give credit to Shannon Library, city manager. She, as soon as she got that phone call from Veretta, and she called me and said, what's going on? We looked her up, Joy with Elios. We did teamwork. And Shannon came up with a solution. And she contacted the people who bought the homes and explained to them, point blank, this neighborhood works together. And they're not gonna sit back and say, can you do this to these families who have been part of this community for all these years? And they were able to work out a schedule so that the people could be there through the winter and have an opportunity to move into other places. And they also went to work and helping them to find places. But that comes from teamwork. It comes from building relationships with powers that be at City Hall. If they know you and you've supported them and then they support you, then you can get things done in the neighborhood. That's how it's worked for us in Nicholtown. And I'm very serious about legislative laws are needed to be totally effective. Washington DC, where I have some cousins that live, it's all working government. They came out with a plan when they had a chance to gentrify all these neighborhoods by selling the rental properties to developers to go in and turn them into condos and stuff. Those people in that community got with the politicians and they came up with a rule that says, if you have rental property and you sell it and it's not gonna be rental property when you sell it, you've got to pay 30% of your profit into a pot. And we take that money and build some affordable housing for those people to move into. We're not gonna let you put them out on the street because this is a neighborhood that's close to this shopping center or this particular place. And so the heck where the heck somewhere to live. So we're gonna put a penalty on it. And they cut down the selling of those houses like that. Because who wants to give up 30% of their property?
It certainly takes some political will to be able to make some of these changes. We haven't talked about this, but Tina, along with Greenville Homeless Alliance, did some extensive work on the issue of eviction. And they came up with some recommendations for how we could help people who often get displaced to remain in houses and not at the disadvantage of landlords. I mean, people think that, you know, when you say eviction, that means that we want people who are not paying rent to stay. What we want, though, is more rules that make more sense in how you proceed with the eviction process so that people who really need to be evicted are evicted and people who really need to stay are able to stay. So in Greenville, we do need to look at how we handle evictions here and evaluate the need for a housing court, because working with landlords, working with renters, like she said, there are people who are living in hotels paying $800, $1,000 a month. They can figure out how, some people can figure out how to pay it because these people are working. We just need to be able to have rules and regulations and opportunities for them to be in safe housing. And a little bit of a safety net for landlords to understand that they will be able to maintain that rental income and maintain those properties. So check out Tina's research.
Hey, Jennifer, had to come up.
And before, Billy, I'm gonna piggyback off of Meliah, but with evictions, I'm gonna give you a little secret that my lawyer friends say. When you know someone who's being evicted, tell them to answer within 10 days and ask for a jury trial.
Yeah, we wanted to put that at the paper. We'll get some landlords. Yes, Jennifer.
Just real quick, the Motel 6 that was closed down on Sunday or Monday, the average prices there were 75 to 100 a night. So people are paying up to $2,000 a month to stay at the Motel 6 by Hampton.
Any final comments from us? Thank you, Jennifer, for that. And then, yes.
I just need my ticket voice. So I'm so glad that our data report could spark some of this conversation. I do want to note that we've got my team from the Shaw Institute. Michael Nietzsche's led the team as good as the data visualizations. We are currently doing really on the ground, fine-tuned detail analyses of Sterling that's being funded through Urban League and Habitat. We're working with Shannon Lavin to do one for the Greenland Spartanburg neighborhood. It is these types of data-driven projects that we hope can spark these conversations, equip neighborhood residents with the information they need to press their local leaders to change. We're going to keep working on it. And so if any of your organizations or groups need some help or some data support, we're always happy to come in and help. And whatever we can do, we're here. So just get in touch with me afterwards. And thank you so much for reading the report and for coming today.
Is there a site we can go to get copies of, to look at the ones you've done?
Yeah. I think the invitation for this meeting, the email invitation, has a link to the racial displacement one, and those ones for Sterling and the Greenland Spartanburg. Those will be public facing data dashboards that we're creating. So everything we do is publicly accessible. It's meant to be read on your phones and shared. And it's simple numbers, simple statistics can tell big stories. And so if you'd like more information, I'll stick around afterwards the meeting. We can exchange stuff. We're here to.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I really want to thank Belge and Gage for hosting this. It's incredibly important, especially right now. We're having a lot of conversation about inclusion or lack of inclusion, DEI. I'm just saying diversity is one of the things that makes Greenville great. So thank you for putting this on. And I'm sure my colleagues would agree.
Thank you to the three of you. Thank you for even spurring this conversation. Thank you to all of you who showed up today. It sounds like we have some homework. So if you have not had a chance to read Dr. Kenkoff's latest report, it will go out in the follow-up email to you so that you can review all of that. We also have recorded this. Hopefully we got a good recording, and so I'll make sure that that also is sent to you. Please do share that out. We try to post all of our forthright conversations on our YouTube channel. So please follow our YouTube channel, and that way you can always be updated when we have some new content there. Next month, same date, well, March 28th, Friday, March 28th, we will have our next forthright conversation. That one will be focused on preventing gun violence. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Jeff Lawson, for sponsoring that forthright conversation. A lot of our conversations, as I mentioned, come from the Faith and Justice Forum, but they're also inspired by Just Faith Ministries curriculum. The Just Faith Ministries program that several of you here today have been through, they make curriculum on a lot of topics. And again, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for that material and for me kind of having skills removed from my eyes and seeing things very differently. So if you're interested in learning more about racial justice in particular, maybe this is something that you're still trying to wrap your head around, there is a wonderful series around racial justice. We also have a wonderful program series about preventing gun violence, and we invite you to participate in that. That'll get started in April. So please do register for our upcoming forthright conversations. If you have not had a chance to sign in, this is how we know who to send the follow-up emails to. So please do sign in, just scan the QR code here. And then also please do fill out our survey. So again, scan to complete our forthright survey. Yes.
I wanted to, this is kind of late breaking news, and I don't remember our exact date. What's the date of our Faith and Justice Forum?
October 24th.
October 24th. So you're the first to know. We're really going to be focusing on courageous voices, and Alicia has just gotten confirmation from Clementa Pinckney's wife. She's going to be one of our keynote speakers and maybe bringing her 15-year-old daughter. As you may know, this is the 10th anniversary of the Mother Emanuel massacre. So it's going to, we're doing a really incredible lineup. It's going to be held at the Phyllis Wheatley Center in the Nicholtown area. But just y'all are the first to know. So Put it on your calendar.
Yes.
There'll be more to come.
You know what time?
It's usually like, 10 to 2.
It'll be an all day,
It'll be
like a
multiple
conference.
speakers.
Yes.
And it's like $35 or $40. It includes lunch. So
Thank you for announcing that. Well, thank you. We will be around if you want to ask any follow-up questions. Not sure if Dr. Kolb or if, any of our speakers need to leave, but certainly we're around. So please do follow up with us if you have any follow-up questions. Village Engage, we actually debrief after these and we figure out, okay, what is it that we need to do in response to what we've heard? So know that what you've said, we are taking that all in and we'll be processing and figuring out how we move forward. So thank you again for your words of wisdom.